All right, let's talk about one of the most maddening things in options trading. IV crush. You know what I'm talking about. You've been there. You nail the direction of a stock. It goes exactly where you thought it would, but you still end up losing money on the option. How is that possible? Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to break down exactly why that happens and, more importantly, how you can avoid.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll set the scene with a frustrating trader's mystery. Then, we're going to unmask the culprit itself, IV crush. After that, we'll dive into when it happens. Then we'll get into the good stuff, how to beat it. And finally, we'll see how you can turn this whole thing into your own secret weapon.
So let's kick things off with a mystery that drives so many traders crazy. I like to call it the case of the vanishing profits. And trust me, it can feel totally illogical and just, well, super frustrating when it happens to you.
I mean, seriously, has this ever happened to you? You do all your homework, you buy a call option, and the stock moves up just like you predicted. But then you look at your P&L and somehow your option is worth less than what you paid for it. It's enough to make you pull your hair out, right? It feels like the market is playing a trick on you. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not a trick. There is a very specific, very real reason for this. It has a name, and that name is IV crush. This is the hidden force that's making those profits disappear into thin air.
So let's finally unmask this suspect. It's time to pull back the curtain and get a really clear look at what we're actually dealing with when we say the words IV crush. Okay, so what is it really? In simple terms, IV crush is just a super fast drop in an option's implied volatility, or IV for short. You can think of implied volatility as the hype premium. It's the market's collective guess on how much a stock might move in the near future. All that uncertainty gets baked right into the option's price, making it way more expensive. And honestly, this is the perfect way to think about it. Imagine IV is the air in a balloon. Before a big party, like an earnings report, the anticipation is huge. Everyone's guessing what's going to happen. So that balloon, the IV, gets pumped full of air, and the option gets expensive. Then the news comes out. The party's over. The uncertainty is gone. And whoosh, all that air rushes right out of the balloon. That, right there, is the crush.
Now, you might hear IV crush called a few other things, like volatility crush or volatility collapse. It doesn't matter what you call it, they all mean the same thing. They point to a very specific kind of risk that's tied to a known future event. That's why it's often just called event risk.
Okay, so now we've identified our culprit. The next step is to study its methods. Because understanding the timing, the pattern of the crime, so to speak, is absolutely crucial if you want to avoid getting caught in this trap. The life cycle of an IV crush is incredibly predictable. It's like a 3-act play. Act 1, the pre-event phase. Uncertainty builds and IV spikes through the roof, making those options super pricey. Act 2, the event itself. The earnings are released, the news drops, and then Act 3, post-event. In a flash, all that uncertainty is gone and the IV absolutely collapses. That's the crush.
So what kinds of events are we talking about here? Well, the most common triggers are earnings announcements. That's the big one, the classic example. But this also happens all the time around other major news, like FDA decisions on drug trials, huge new product launches, or even when some big market-wide question finally gets an answer.
Now, here's the key detail. This crush doesn't hit every option equally. It's always the most brutal for at-the-money options, those where the strike price is really close to the current stock price. And the reason for that comes down to a Greek called vega. Just think of vega as an option sensitivity to hype. A high vega means the option's price is extremely sensitive to those changes in implied volatility. So when that IV balloon pops, the high vega options get hammered the hardest.
All right, we've identified the problem, we get the pattern. Now for the most important part, right? How do we actually beat the crush? Let's dive into the strategy.
To beat the crush, you just have to understand this simple before and after picture. Before the big event, implied volatility is sky high. That makes options expensive, and it's a super risky time to be a buyer. But after the event, IV plummets. Options get a whole lot cheaper, and it becomes a much safer environment to place a trade. Recognizing this difference is everything.
So this gives us a really clear 3-step playbook. Step 1 is simple. Always check the IV before a big event. If it's ridiculously high, that's a huge red flag. Step 2, the easiest defense of all. Just wait. Let the event happen, let the crush do its thing, and then you can look at buying those newly cheap options. And for the more advanced folks, there's step 3.
You can flip the script and actually sell options to try and profit from that high IV before it collapses.
So let's bring this all home. What we've just talked about isn't just a defensive move. It's way more than that. This knowledge can be a powerful new weapon in your trading arsenal, a real edge.
And this quote really just nails it. Ivy Crush isn't some tiny, obscure detail. It is a major reason why so many people lose money buying options. Simply being aware that it exists puts you way ahead of the curve and helps you make much, much smarter decisions about when to get into a trade.
And that is the real game changer here. You don't have to be a victim of those vanishing profits anymore. Once you understand the mechanics of Ivy Crush, you're back in control. You can spot the trap before you fall into it, and you can start using these predictable patterns to your own advantage.
So I'll leave you with this. The next time you see a big earnings report or some major news on the calendar, you're going to see it completely differently. You'll know about that Ivy balloon getting bigger and bigger, ready to pop. The only question is, now that you know the trap is there, how are you going to trade?